Fourth and final hour of the show, 9 a.m. already, and beautiful Music City, USA. Ramon, Kayla, and Will is brewed up by 8th and Rose to RKW. Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson. I'm Will Bowling. Mac Morey is making the show happen in relief of Robert Walsh this morning. And coming up in 20 minutes, John Glennon, who covers the Titans and Preds and more for the Nashville Post. He will join us discussing the Preds' Game 1 loss in Vancouver last night. Predators looking to bounce back tomorrow night in Vancouver. We can talk some NFL draft, talk some Titans, and hit it all with John Glennon coming up in 20 minutes. Guys, over the weekend, home teams in the NBA and NHL, flawless. 8-0 in the NBA playoffs. Home teams were 6-0 over the weekend in the NHL playoffs, and the Preds among those with the best opportunity to change that statistic, leading 2-1 with 10 minutes to go last night, unable to get the job done.
Yeah, that's crazy. If you'd have did, an 8-game parlay in the NBA, you'd have probably cashed out some retirement.
14-game parlay between all the home teams.
Yeah, pretty fascinating.
Between hockey and basketball.
And I honestly didn't think Milwaukee was going to pull it out with Giannis not playing either. But Dame went to Dame time last night, man, or yesterday, and it turned out to be very good for him. I think he had 35 points. His postgame was very telling. And if you listen to Dame Lillard talk last night after the game, it really does take a hit to what the regular season means. He said they were asking him in the postgame, how do you feel about what's the difference between your defense now in the playoffs versus in the regular season? And he pretty much said, yeah, well, I know how to pace myself in the regular season because we got back-to-back games, we got more travel, and he was like, well, I can focus in more in the playoffs. And I was just like, you're 100% correct, Dane, but for the consumer in the regular season games, that sucks a little bit.
Yes, it does.
Just a little bit it does. But that's why the playoffs in the NBA means a whole lot more. And that's where you start to see, again, home court advantage. That's where you start to see the superstars really ramp up and play well. And they pretty much handed it to them last night to the Pacers. And Pacers got a good squad.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at kind of what has happened on the NHL side, you got a lot of the time where you see the President's Trophy winners being the team that kind of comes out and sometimes lays an egg early on in the playoffs. So you did not see that with the New York Rangers. This is a very dominant squad where I say watch out because they could very well go on to break that curse of winning the President's Trophy and then winning the whole thing because they look like, at least in that first game against Washington, that they're revved and ready to go. But for the Predators, not having the home ice advantage in terms of the playoffs because, they were the first wild card team, going all the way up to Vancouver. Like, you're not even staying within the States. Like, you're going to Vancouver. You haven't played in about a week. And I don't want to make excuses for this team, but I do feel like some of that played into this first game performance. They came out fine, but it's not about just coming out fine, especially in the playoffs. It's about finishing. And they weren't able to do that because it looked like they ran out of gas. And a lot of that sometimes has to do with, hey, you haven't played a game in a minute. But now you have that under your belt. The bounce back on Tuesday is crucial for this Preds team in terms of trying to, you said it earlier, and I think you're right, steal one in Vancouver.
Have to.
Just got to get one. At a best of 7, you get one of the two on the road, you're in good shape. For sure, going back with home ice. It was interesting. I looked up the statistic, and a researcher, Peter Hirsch, wrote this article June of last year about the biggest home field advantages in different U.S. pro sports. If you had to guess, where is the biggest home field advantage among NBA, MLB, NFL, and NHL?
I'm going to go Boston.
Over the last... No. Just which league has the biggest home field advantage? Like, NBA teams have the biggest home field advantage, NHL, MLB, NFL, according to the last 10 years of data.
I'm going to go NBA.
Kayla?
I'm going to go MLB.
So NBA is correct. About largest home field advantage. So in this piece by a researcher, Peter Hirsch, says NBA was 1, NFL was 2.
Wow.
NHL is 3 and MLB the least amount of difference between both teams and home field advantage.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Baseball is such a hard sport to really hone in on and just say the crowd matters. Like, because pitchers, they're in their own world on the mound. If you can hit and the right ball is coming your way, like, that's all that matters to you. Like, I think there's so much individuality in, like, baseball that nothing matters but what's happening in front of you. Where basketball, like, the crowd, the way they stand up on the sideline.
They reach out and touch you.
Yeah, basketball.
They reach out and touch you.
Intimate.
And football, no, it's a snap count. It's predicated upon the crowd, right? Like, there's a lot of factors that go into those situations. So I can see that.
Yep. Interesting.
And maybe hockey is because all arenas at that time of, like, like whether or not you're playing at your place, they're all kind of so crazy and loud, and it's ticking up another notch when you get to the postseason. Because that's interesting too. I thought maybe they'd be up there.
And you can tell that to be true too. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you can tell that to be true too, because NBA players have at times had fans kicked out of arenas. Because of how they're heckling them and how they're going at them. So, yeah, that makes sense to me. I guessed at that one, but after thinking about it, Will, that makes a lot of sense, dog. Only other thing in football I think that can affect you in that type of way is if you're an indoor team and you had to go on the road and play outdoors in the cold or in the rain, right?
Sure. Albert Breer at SI.com has a Monday morning quarterback column. Comes out every Monday with headlines around the league. And today, he has notes on all 32 teams, the needs that they have, what he is hearing about each individual draft. And I thought this was interesting. This is brand new info that is just out that we've not talked about yet. So we'll talk about this here for the first time. That obviously, he writes, Albert Breer, just about everyone expects the Titans to go offensive line in Brian Callahan's first draft, working with Rand Carthon and president of football operations, Chad Brinker. You have the Joe Alt link. Albert Breer writing, Alt would make sense in a lot of different ways. So I think this would be the floor for the offensive tackle for Joe Alt. Essentially saying, if Joe Alt is there at 7, he's the pick. He's not getting past number 7. We do now have a little bit more of an idea of who else the Titans like, though. There are 2 names after Joe Alt that Albert Breer gives that the Titans reportedly like. J.C. Latham, tackle from Alabama, and Oregon State's Tali Fuaga. Albert Breer writes, this is also another team I've heard connected to J.C. Latham. Perhaps if the Titans wind up in a trade down scenario, those 2 and Oregon State's Tali Fuaga made it to Nashville for top 30 visits. If there's a curveball here, he says, the 4th name to remember for the Titans, LSU wide receiver Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
I think if the Titans are picking in the top 15, one of those 4 players, I could comfortably say is going to be a Tennessee Titan. Joe Alt, J.C. Latham, Tali Fuaga, Malik Neighbors.
With J.C. Latham, though, and Tali Fuaga, I just want to ask you really quick, because we've talked about this before, but could they be potentially players that can be moved to left tackle because they're primarily right guys? Or would that just be they're just solidifying that right side and then worrying about the left tackle as we continue to go on?
I think they're primarily right. Any player that wants to can change over, Kayla. I won't say it's out of the question for guys like them that have played mostly right. And of course, J.C. Latham's been scouted as a guy that's either right tackle or right guard. Tali Fuaga is also another one of those guys, is right tackle or right guard. It depends upon what type of athletes they are and how quickly can they learn and what's the adjustment period for dudes like them. Again, I keep them on the right side again because you can stack and build. And if you take one of those guys, if Alt is gone, I think it changes your planning for the future. Again, and of course, you got to look at who's the guys inside of the building. I always somewhat bring this up because, again, you got Bill Callahan here. And again, you don't want to be in a position to where you're putting a lot on his plate. It's good to have great coaches that coach great players with a high pedigree. That's always the number one thing you want. The reason Nick Saban is a good coach is because he's able to recruit some of the best guys in the nation, right? So if you're a good coach, you're going to become great because you got great talent around you. And the issue that you have is you don't know what Nicholas Petit-Frere is in this style of offense and with this coaching staff. There's a lot of questions to be, answered at a later date if you do take a draft at right tackle.
It's interesting, though. Could you make the argument you could just keep him at right tackle, too? If you draft a right tackle by trade, because you still need a right tackle as well in this draft. I think there's a high likelihood that this team's starting left tackle and right tackle are not on the roster when they start week 1.
Could be. It could be. But again, it's about balance and management of a squad and roster, too. As much as, of course, a lot of folks are just saying, all right, we're going to wash our hands with this old regime as far as Malik Willis goes, as far as MPF goes, as far as Dylan Radin goes. You got to sometimes work with what you have in front of you. Now, if there's a trade to happen and somebody's willing to give up somebody, oh, yeah, you take that opportunity to grab a guy, right? And, of course, you got to also look at what's his name from Cleveland, the trade that just happened, Watkins.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be a factor. Though,
I don't either, but it's the fact that he's already been in the league for 2 years, and it's a matter of, again, surviving to get through until the next year. Jerome Watkins, I think. Is
Leroy Watson.
Leroy, there it is.
I knew it was I am.
Got the W right.
That's got to be right. Yeah, that's got to be a situation right there. My bad for messing up your name, Leroy. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm not out on the guys inside the building yet until I see what they look like in training camp. If we see a different MPF, the thing with MPF is this. I mean, I know we're up again. He got to fight. He legitimately might have to go out there and punch somebody without breaking his hand. That's what I want to see from him. Same thing from Ravens, man. A lot of this surviving the NFL, y'all, is about, are you willing to fight and not be somebody's walking mat?
Yeah. I'm skeptical, but that's a conversation we can continue to have.
Yeah.
And coming up, it is a conversation that we can also have with John Glennon, who covers the Titans, Preds, and more for the Nashville Post. We'll talk Titans and Preds with him coming up next. RKW, Ramon, Kayla, Will is brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone, 615-737-1045. We'll get back to phone calls coming up at the tail end of the program. Mac Morey, our producer, Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling, connecting with John Glennon of the Nashville Post coming up here in just a moment. Hope you guys have got a way to get extra caffeine in today if you were up late watching hockey in Vancouver last night.
Absolutely, Will. And also this, too, man. Seen a lot of articles come out. Well, I ain't going to say a lot of articles. A few articles coming out about potential draft picks and stuff this week, man. And I love this week even more because it settles the speculation, right? And it really starts talking legitimately like prospects, like who is actually going to go here. And, you know, this team is actually in love with this player. So let's dead a bunch of the season of lies that we have to deal with.
Sure.
You know?
That's the best part of like finally getting to this is the season of lies will now be played out in front of us. Which were lies, which were not.
Yeah.
Well, this is not a lie. We've got John Glennon on the line.
Hey.
Talking a little Titans, a little bit of Preds this morning. What's up, John? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you all?
We're good.
We are pumping the extra coffee this morning after a late night of Predators hockey. How big of a missed opportunity was this? 2-1 lead in the third period for the Preds last night, dropping game one.
Yeah, I think it was a significant missed opportunity. You know, as you say, a 2-1 lead. The Preds, you know, we saw early in the season, the Preds had a lot of difficulty holding leads. But, you know, kind of once they straightened the season out, started playing Andrew Burnett's system, you know, better, they really ended that sort of habit of giving up leads late in the second or late in the third. But it popped up again last night. You know, I think they had a great chance. Not only were they up 2-1, but they had 3 power plays, you know, with a chance to kind of drive that final nail in the coffin and make it 3-1. Didn't look particularly good on those. You know, and now all of a sudden you're in a hole. The good thing for the Predators, I would say, you know, I thought they played pretty well. Not great, but pretty well. You got to remember, too, they were 6 days off since their last game, so there was going to be a little bit of rust. So they'll try to even it up on Tuesday. But, yeah, that was a good chance to grab home ice advantage right away.
John Glennon at Glennon Sports on Twitter, covering the Titans, Preds, and more for the Nashville Post. John, UC Saros is now 3-8 as a starter in playoff games in his career. It's been a while since he has been able to start a playoff game. How much are you concerned, if at all, about his postseason history and the way last night went for him specifically?
Yeah, I would say a little bit of concern. I don't think it's, you know, a huge alarms going off quite yet, but there were a couple goals last night. It's tough to make a call on them because both of them were probably slight redirections, and that makes it very difficult for a goalie. You know, both of the Canucks' first 2 goals. The first one was kind of what seemingly was an innocent-looking, you know, wrist shot from around the top of the face-off circle, but it ticked off Roman Yossi's stick just after leaving the Canucks stick, and that may have redirected it just enough to bother Saros. I still think he should have made the save on that first goal, and then on the second, again, it started out as kind of a you know, a fairly not too threatening kind of shot from the blue line. It goes through a few bodies, ticks off a Vancouver forward, Pia Suter. And that's enough to get it past Saros. But I don't think, judging kind of from the replays, I don't think he ever saw the puck. So I'm not sure that the redirect can be blamed there. So, yeah, I don't think he was quite up to his normal self last night. And the Predators are going to need that. You know, that's an essential part of their game, certainly. You know, when the Predators turned it around this year, Saros was at the forefront, putting up great numbers. So I would say a little bit of concern, but not the 5-alarm fire bell quite yet.
John Glennon of the Nashville Post joining us this morning on RKW. They'll also need production out of the star Philip Forsberg. He's been sensational this year, JG, from start to finish. Really the first time we've seen that consistent production from the top liner. But in this one, not as many shots on goal for this team, but for him in particular, how much do we need to see out of him in this series?
Yeah, I think the kind of season that Philip Forsberg had, tremendous. 93 points, career best, set the franchise record for goals. When you do that, it's great, obviously, but you also set a high bar for yourself and you set expectations. And Philip Forsberg had an assist last night, but at times was a little too quiet, I thought. There were a couple opportunities, I think certainly one or two on the power play that he had some decent chances and missed the net. So they're going to need more from him. Ryan O'Reilly is a guy on that line who came through with the power play goal. But let's face it, that line, Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, and Gustav Nyquist, carried the Predators offensively for a large part of the regular season. And it becomes more difficult in the postseason because opponents really tailor their game to stopping the top line, of the other team. And I think that's what we saw a little bit last night in the in game one. But that Predator line, and I think Philip Forsberg in particular, has to find a way to get more possession, to create more chances. And as I say, when Philip Forsberg has the kind of regular season he did, that sets the expectations for playoffs too, and they're going to need some more from him.
JG, as a fan base, just getting the pulse of the fan base, do you feel like with them missing the playoffs last year and kind of in a way making a surprise run at them this year where they were about to sell at the deadline, are the expectations to even be able to get a first round win, or what are the expectations for this team this year?
I think the expectations, created from the way they finished the season and especially the last half of the season, I think the expectations are certainly for a very competitive series. I would think this series should go to 6 or 7 games based on the way, based on the way how Nashville finished. You can, as you said, most people didn't pick the Predators even to be in the playoffs. So, by that standard, they've done well. But I think, they created expectations with that 18-game point streak, by finishing so strong. And now, it's time to show the fans something. What I think, could be a real achievement here for the Preds, they have never won a playoff series when losing game one. I want to say it's been 13 times over the years they've lost game one in a playoff series, have never gone on to win it. So, if they were to kind of break that streak, if they were to knock off a Vancouver team that, finished second in the Western Conference, huge achievement, I think, for a Preds playoff team or a Preds team that really wasn't even expected to make the playoffs.
John Glennon here with us this morning discussing Preds and also football. John, as it pertains to this group dropping this first game, does travel and hockey matter, considering they had to go all the way up to the Pacific Northwest? I think it may be at a 5.5, 6 hour flight. Is that something that factors into it?
I don't think so in game one. I think, as series goes on, and maybe, if the Preds had another West Coast series, if they were to win this, maybe in the second or even, a third round, maybe that's when it starts to show a little bit more. But, the Preds had, 6 days off, between games. I don't think being tired was a factor here. I think if anything, probably rust played a role in the game last night. I didn't think the Predators looked quite as sharp as we'd seen them for most of the past several weeks, and that can happen. Towards the second half of the season, you're used to playing every second, every third night at most, and all of a sudden it goes 6 games or 6 days without a game. I think that impacts the team, and I think we saw that a little bit last night. That's why it would have been, such a benefit to be able to still come up with that game one win, and just a little bit shy in a few different categories.
Glenn, here with the Tennessee Titans, also with the new staff, new coach, fresh GM also, and all the talks on getting offensive help for this team, particularly at the left tackle position. If Joe Alt's not there, maybe another tackle. But there's also an option for a wide receiver. It seems to be, that you've somewhat expedited the process of trying to see what you have out of Will Levis. In your opinion, what's the expectations for a guy like him that, firmly has the keys to the franchise?
I'm expecting a significant jump from Will Levis, based on the personnel he'll have. You add Calvin Ridley. You may well add a wide receiver in the draft. You've got a more offensive-minded head coach and a play caller. You will likely have a better offensive line. Low bar there, I know, because last year's offensive line was so poor. But I think you'll have a better line. You'll have running backs that are, as they say, it's going to be a 1A and 1B situation. Both of them be able to catch the ball coming out of the backfield. So I would think, based on what we saw Will Levis last year, his talent level, and kind of the intensity he brings not only to games, but I think in terms of learning as well, I think there's reason to believe for a significant step in the right direction for Will Levis.
John Glennon with us at Glennon Sports, where you follow him on Twitter. If Joe Alt is the slam dunk at number 7, we've been asking everybody, John, who's plan B if the Chargers decide to make him the pick at number 5? If he is not there, who are you going with on Thursday night?
Well, I think first of all, it would open up the chance to trade back if you want to do that. Knowing that there are other offensive tackles on the board. If you want to get some more draft capital, the Titans don't have a ton there in the early rounds. I think it opens up that opportunity. If you do want to stay at number 7, it's difficult for me to pass up one of those wide receivers. You look at the team right now, and then obviously say a wide receiver is no longer a glaring need because you've got Hopkins and you've got Ridley. So it's not a glaring need at this point, for this year. But still, if you're Brian Callahan and you're a guy that's used to having 3 good wide receivers on your team, and you have a guy like, potentially, Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze sitting there at number 7, again, this is a situation where Alt is not available. I'd have a tough time passing up best player available, and I think at that point, one of those wide receivers would be the guy.
In terms of a position of need defensively, where do you go first if you go defense, whether that be in the second round or if you trade back and you get a third round pick? Where are you going first defensively with this team?
I still think, they had a nice kind of under the radar, pickup defensively along the line there with Sebastian Joseph Day, and I think he'll be a good contributor. But I still think they need more, with Danico Autry gone up on the front 7 there. He was a guy who did so many things well. He was so versatile. So that's kind of where I think is the most pressing need defensively. That's why, I'm certainly not the first guy to suggest Darius Robinson from Missouri, but he's a guy that looks really good to me just because I think he brings a lot of those same traits that Danico Autry had. He's versatile. He's strong, physical guy, can rush the passer too. Really, last year was really the first time he played much on the edge, and I think had 9 sacks. So he's kind of a work in progress in terms of rushing the passer, but very versatile. So that would be my first area of need defensively. And boy, if he was there at 38 and I already had my tackle, he'd be tough to pass up.
Glenn, in your time in covering this team, have you seen this much of an arms race? And I'll just call it that in a sense because of the young quarterbacks and the moves that's being made, even in the Peyton Manning era or Andrew Luck, as far as teams trying to immediately compete with each other. Have you seen this happen before?
This is entertaining, I got to say. We haven't seen this much before in the division, and certainly in the with the Titans too. They have just had so much money, salary cap space this year. We're not used to seeing that from the Titans, and I think they've made very good use of it. We talked about Calvin Ridley, but certainly L'Jarius Sneed and Tony Pollard. The list goes on for the number of key free agents that the Titans have signed. And Chidobe Awuzie, as well. And they're going to need those kind of defenders, I think, in particular, because you're looking at C.J. Stroud all of a sudden and an extremely high-powered offense there. Indianapolis Colts should only get better with Anthony Richardson there, and certainly Jacksonville has become quite the player the last 2 years as well. So it seems to me that the division has kind of been looked down upon for a number of years, and rightly so. It hasn't been the best or an elite division by any stretch. Is certainly moving in the right direction, and I like what the Titans are doing in terms of that arms race. I think they've made really good use of their salary cap space this offseason. So should be right there. I think competing with these other teams.
He is an expert on all things Nashville sports, covering the Titans, Preds, and more for the Nashville Post. John Glennon at Glennon Sports, a must-follow on social media if you are a fan of sports in this area. John, appreciate the time as always. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thanks, JG.
Yes, sir. There he is. John Glennon with us this morning, talking Titans, talking Preds. And I want to go back to what Mike Keith said earlier. If you missed that conversation, you can find it wherever you download podcasts right when the show ends. The fact that this is the most unique offseason in team history because it is the first time in franchise history that we have ever had cap space like this. Going all the way back to 1994 when the salary cap was introduced. I think it's interesting what Mike said, too, about how teams with less cap space are more likely to trade down than trade up in some circumstances because you would rather have later picks that are not going to cost you as much 4 or 5 years down the road with that money tied up maybe elsewhere. Mike Keith even said if the Titans wanted to trade up, leave themselves 4 picks at the entire draft, they have the money to do that because they got a lot of players on their roster already as well. Interesting.
It is. I didn't expect him to say something like that as far as, this is the first time, and he broke it down. Of course, you have good teams, and you got to spend too much money. Then it gets broken up, and you got to spend. This is a good place to be, and I think that's why the optimism is so high right now as far as what this team is capable of. You feel like you got the right coach as far as having an offensive-minded guy, a younger offensive-minded guy, considering what the defense has looked like with Vrabel at the head of it. The defense has always been solid. So, of course, in today's NFL, and I think that's why it's so unique about Brian Callahan is in today's NFL, this is the type of coach that you want. This is the type of guy that you say to yourself, we can build and stack for years with them. And also this, too, the fact that he's not an offensive coordinator and he's, one of your play callers, if not the main play caller on game day, you don't have to worry about another team coming and poach him, right? As far as being an offensive coordinator up for a head coaching job. You just did that to Cincinnati. So that's the difference right there.
Interesting. Danny in the F&M Bank chat says, do not trade up. If anything, back to 13 or 14 and add picks. Yes, I know. That's still, I think, the more likely scenario. Right. But the point that Mike Keith is making is that everything is on the table for the Titans in a way that has not been the case in this team's history. No doubt.
Yeah.
And he even mentioned in terms of trade backs too, it might be even more beneficial or more realistic, I should say, to trade back in the second. And we brought that scenario up on this show last week to possibly then get maybe a third round, right?
That's what I'm doing.
More possible maybe in the first round.
If Bo Nix or Michael Penix is still there and somebody wants him, make him a deal.
Oh, yeah. I thought you was going to say you're taking one.
No. Oh, Lord, no.
Load him up in the quarterback room.
I am not one of those advocating for a quarterback to be selected for a third straight draft.
Right.
Got you.
By the Titans. Coming up, headlines on the way out. Let's grade another mock draft on the way out. Ramon's been doing them all show during the commercial break.
Grade yours.
I know, yeah. I need to do one for the. I got you after this.
All right, that's next on RKW.
Hiller. It's Ramon Foster here for Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical here, telling you the month of April, man, that you can smile and save this month with Hiller. From now until the end of this month, April 30th, take advantage of big savings on whole home systems, like enjoying a $1,500 off select new HVAC systems, which are clutch because it gets hot here, all right? A whole home water filtration and descalerless, or select new whole home generators. If you've been waiting around for the right time, trick is there is no right time, all right, to upgrade. Just do it now and replace those systems. Now is the time. Do like I do and visit happyhiller.com today for details.
Wrapping up the show, RKW brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone. Great first day for Mac Morey, filling in for Robert Walsh. It just got even better because you're playing the 1975.
I listened.
Oh,
Look at that.
outstanding.
Details matter.
Listen to Mac. Quietly working back there.
All right, Jordan Reed's 7-round mock draft. Everybody's got their 7-round mock draft coming out today. We mentioned this earlier in the show. He's got Rome Odunze, the pick for the Tennessee Titans, at number 7. He is the only one that I've seen do that in the past maybe 2 months. He's the only one that does not have Joe Alt. And in this scenario, he does have Joe Alt going 5 to the LA Chargers. Brock Bowers going 10 to the Jets as well, which I feel like is gaining a little bit more steam. Mm-hmm. At 38, Ramon Foster, tell me about BYU tackle Kingsley Suamatia.
He is the first cousin of for the Detroit Lions.
Penei Sewell.
Penei Sewell.
Yes, they are cousins. Can play left and right. Of course, the efficiencies are a little bit of a bender at times, but he's aggressive, can be over-aggressive at times. He made the decision to leave Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, because of his values. He's a guy that's very sure of himself, understands that, hey, look, this is what I want to do in life, and he did those things. I had a good conversation with him at the Senior Bowl, and a guy that gets it. He's a grinder, not on the same level as Alden Fashanu and stuff like that, but he's a gameplay a player, Will.
So he played 687 snaps at right tackle in 2022, only a 2-year starter in his college career. Played the full season at left tackle in 2023, only allowed 2 sacks in those 2 years combined.
Yeah.
Interesting, his 2023 run blocking grade from PFF, 52.9. Yeah. His pass blocking grade, 86.1.
Oh.
Good protector.
According to Pro Football Focus. And PFF writes about him, he is a dream prospect to draft and develop somewhere on day 2. And the full blurb on him says, I worry about him being baptized by fire if drafted in the first round and called upon to start right away. Well, what if you were calling upon him to start at right tackle?
Yeah,
right away.
I like him at right tackle.
I would not be opposed to Joe Alt being your first pick at 7 and Kingsley Suamatia being your pick at 38. I am all for the first 2 picks being on tackles.
John Glennon just wrote an article. Speaking of JG, he was on the show. He wrote an article about that recently, talking to an NFL, person about that, taking tackle, and then going wide receiver, but more of a luxury, they said, for the Titans to pick wide receiver.
I mean, you got trade capital, too, if you do want to move some guys around. That's, of course, the MPF that's dangling out there. If you want to do that, somebody, I mean, it's not like you have to just draft people. You can also trade for picks also.
Let's put it this way. Who do you believe more in? Kyle Phillips or Nicholas Petit-Frere?
MPF.
That might be a bigger conversation to have tomorrow.
That's a great conversation.
Because I think the evaluation of those 2 guys could make the decision for you. Who do you believe is a bigger contributor over the next 3 seasons, NPF or Kyle Phillips? I'm going Kyle Phillips. I'm definitely going Kyle Phillips. With the chemistry that he showed when he was healthy with Will Levis is better than anything we saw from NPF in training camp or on the field last year before he got hurt.
We might want to have that conversation.
Yeah, I'm ready now. Now I'm anxious.
I might want to have that conversation, Will, to kind of break that down for you.
I would rather draft a right tackle early than a slot receiver. But again, it's kind of hard to just make blanket statements like that because you don't know the specifics of, all right, well, which right tackle? Which slot receiver? Are you talking Ladd McConkey? Are we talking Ricky Pearsall?
I think I'd much rather draft a slot receiver.
What about Roman Wilson?
Yeah, Roman Wilson. Like, there's a multitude of guys that are out there that you can have, but that one seems to be a little bit more durable than what Kyle Phillips has provided you. That's my situation right there for a dude like him is it's the same thing that Josh Wiley's going to be critiqued for, too. Can he stay on the field?
So in this mock draft scenario, Ladd McConkey would have gone at number 37 to the Chargers as well, for the sake of conversation in the Jordan Reed's 7-round mock draft.
Are the Chargers going to be a headache for the Titans in this draft?
Yeah, because they're picking right in front of them twice.
And they need a lot out there also.
At 5 and at 37.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yep.
That'll be interesting to see how aggressive the Titans get then to move in front of a team that has that many needs.
Yeah, this scenario, Joe Alt and Malik Neighbors are the 2 picks in front of you in Jordan Reed's 7-round mock. How do you even sit down to do a 7-round mock draft by yourself?
For every team?
That is so many picks.
At some
dedication
point,
right
I
there.
think you're lying to to the consumers at that point. There's no way you're that versed and just knowing. There's no. Because they don't have to answer anybody. That's bad. I got my mock draft up too, but you can go ahead and go through there.
Oh, you go for it.
All
You
right.
should post it online.
I might, but of course it's all
You
lies.
and every other human that's ever had a
Yeah.
X account.
I'm seeing it across my timeline.
Round 1, Joe Alt. Round 2, Adisa Isaac.
Edge rusher out of Penn State.
Edge rusher. Tight end, Kate Stover out of Ohio State in round 4. D lineman, Tyler Davis out of Clemson in round 5. Round 6 is safety, Josh Proctor out of Ohio State.
Ooh.
And round 7, Jalen Ford, linebacker out of Texas. And round 7, guard, Layden Robinson out of
A&M,
out
right?
of A&M,
Okay.
yes. Overall draft grade from PFF is an A- for this class.
Well, look at you.
Only
Always
one that
take
got
an
a
A-.
bag.
Draft expert.
Yeah, only one that got a bad grade was Tyler Davis. And if we went over him last week of our under the radar guys,
Don't you like Tyler Davis
I
a
do.
lot?
His issue is he's had injuries.
Yeah.
So that's why a guy like him would end up being a fifth round pick
Sure.
based off of those sentiments right there. But again, high ranking prospect coming out of high school, just had a multitude of injuries at his positions.
By the way, Stover is all the things I hear up there at Ohio State in terms of him and what he could be at the next level.
Yeah, Stover's nice. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Interesting in the transfer portal in the college basketball world over the weekend. You have Auburn point guard Aiden Holloway transferring from Auburn to Alabama. And 30 minutes ago, you have Roddy Gale Jr., an Ohio State guard, transferring to Michigan. What happened to the game I love?
The day we live in, the world we live in, right?
Oh, we live in
Man,
now.
it's different.
I guess I can't imagine. I mean, you got,
Henry To'oTo'o.
yes, going to Alabama. Did he win his last year at Alabama against the
He did not.
Ball? So in the series, he
Strictly business.
lost 4 times in that series.
3 times.
3 times in that
Only
series.
played 3 years of college. Tennessee did pick up a commitment, though, from Hoover High School forward Dwayne Brown over the weekend.
I thought
Number 1 player in Alabama.
Nice.
thought that would have an effect on Toby Awaka's situation, but this is for next year's class. as
Yeah,
it pertains
class of
to him.
2025.
Yeah, 25. Big time get. He can handle the ball also, looks like. So
Yeah, he looks kind of like a point forward.
point forward.
That's 6'9". We'll get the a detailed breakdown, I'm sure, from Ron Slay tomorrow. But looks good.
Yeah, closing, man. I just need the football team to start getting some commits. But that starts from May to
About now.
About now,
July.
It's here.
Yeah, it's here.
You said what, running back possibly in terms of transfer at least?
I don't think so.
I think
Yeah.
they said they were going to pass on that
They're
one.
going to pass on one?
Yeah, because, of course, Cam's your guy, and they got to see what they're going to get out of the young fella, Peyton.
Think they
Lewis.
like Deshaun Bishop enough
Okay.
at running back.
I hate this world
And
sometimes as
Khalif
far
Keith.
as ratings and stuff. Like, we look for the ones that are higher rating, and Deshaun Bishop is a guy
Carnes High School.
that may be good enough that you just got to put him in the right situation.
Sure.
Coming up tomorrow morning, Austin Price, Ron Slay, 2 days from the draft. We talk to you tomorrow morning. It is here,
It is.
ladies and gentlemen. NFL Draft Week, we've got all the coverage. We'll have Preds preview of Game 2 tomorrow as well. Ramon Foster, your mock draft is hot. What else is hot?
What is hot, man? Your Twitter fingers and your mic at all times, good people.